Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we are going to be doing a video on Maximus, multiband, and U. So we've talked about multiband effects before. Now we're going to give you an example of it. So I have sort of a specific setup here. You do not need to worry about the setup. What I want to do is I want to show you what can multiband offer you. So I have a little song right here, and we're gonna listen to it with multiband processing using Maximus, of course, because it's a Maximus video, and then not using Maximus. So let's talk about this. So first, I'm going to this. So we're dealing with this sound right here. Sounds like this. And so I'm going to play it for you. And then so if you look, now if you don't know about routing and stuff, FL12, how to make your first song in FL12, it's a series I have. Go watch it. It's to fill in all those gaps with just FL and stuff about how to do if you're brand new to FL. So here we have insert 4. It is going out to the master. If I go to 5, however, check it out. If I go to 5, bang, it gets multiband compressed. It goes through these three guys first, low, mids, and highs, and gets sent out. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. I just want to show you really quick some options you have. So I'm going to start at bar 9, and here we go. And this is without multiband processing. Cool. So now let's put multiband processing on it. Now I'm doing some stuff just to sound interesting, but you will see the power of this as we get going. It's one of the best weapons you have, especially for utilizing plugins and configurations you may have never done before. So you see I did a little move there to maybe show you that this was taking the mids out. It says mid volume. So that's what multiband can offer you. It has a lot of options. Now, what is the basic idea? Well, you take your signal, you route it into 3 tracks, and you use Maximus to split it up. When you split it up, you have just the lows. So here's just lows, or just the mids, or just highs. Now my mids are pretty all over the map, but that's because of crossovers. So we're about to approach crossovers here. So now let's talk about this. Let's get more into this. So you might be saying, well, what are the possibilities here? Well, when you split them up like that, you can affect perhaps to have different distortion on the lows than the mids, or compress the mids more and expand the highs, or you can do all these things. Yeah, you can put reverb just on the highs and not on the mids and lows. You just have all these options. Some of them could be accomplished with filters. Now that is where we're going to pause right there at this filter thing. So let's go to the low band first, because we're going to talk about these filter things. You people who are like, oh yeah, filters, filter. I could just see it going through your head right now, but you might not know. So let's talk about some of these things. If you're such a big filter fan, there are different kinds of filters. There are a lot of kinds of filters. You probably have just always thought of them in the general sense. If you were like me, if you've gotten a little more serious and you're into DSP, all this stuff's going to be old news to you, but it's kind of good to just have a refresher. And I've got a pretty cool example lined up here. So what we're going to be doing is when I sent my signal here, I sent it and then I put a Maximus on it, right? So it comes through this channel, then goes into my low channel, and it hits this Maximus. The first thing that it does. I'm going to turn this wave shaper off so that we could talk about this. Now, what's going on here is I'm compressing the lows in a very kind of strange way, and then I have brought it up in post. So I have essentially flattened my lows substantially. Now, there are a couple ways to do this. There's the mid and highs. Now, there are these bands, and next to each band, you have these options to turn them on and off. On turns the band on. Now, this band does 2 things. Number 1, it goes directly out of the plugin. So it goes, Maximus receives information. It says, oh, I got information, and it will send it straight to the low, mid, and high, and to the master band. That's important. But we're going to talk about that because the master band actually receives information from the low, mids, and highs. There's one situation that I have, though. I can't remember it because it was a pretty particular one, where you can get it to behave a little bit differently. Oh no, that's with compression off. So it's still by law, it has to go through low, mid, and high first, and then it gets to the master band. Okay. So that's what on means. So when I turn it on, it's going to go through here and it's going to go through the master. But I just said that the master, this also has its own output. So what does that mean? Well, if I turn this off, So let's say, okay, so I have it on and I have my master band on. It'll sound the same. See, there it is. I turn the wave shaper off. That's why it sounds different than before. So that's the original signal. Now, if I turn my master band off, you would think, oh, well, the master's off, so no sound's going to come out. Like, right? That's kind of what you think. Well, check it out. Oh, buddy. So, yeah, that's not true. So you can. So they have their own separate outs. But now it's kind of clear. Now, let's say I turn compression off. What does that mean? Well, if I play it, you notice that the band... Now no compression is applied, but it still goes out. And my master band is off. No frequencies are coming out of my master band. There's nothing going through here, but it is going through my lows. Why is this frozen? I don't know why it's frozen. Anyways, if I turn my master band on, there it is. See, there's the audio. I don't know why the audio, there it is right there. So if I turn this off though, I still get audio. But whoa, that's weird. That's weird. I've never noticed that about Maximus. It pauses your displays if you turn the master off, but you can still hear it. So that's a weird deal here. Maybe I have a misunderstanding. But anyways, the point is you can have the setting on off and this thing will work fine. And this is also really important for these. So if you turn the compressor off, what this button says is ignore the compression, but send the audio right on through. So that's what this button does. You can mute it. Now this one, as you can see, the blue here is still active, meaning audio is still going through. But as soon as I hit muted, bang, it like dies. So this is saying no audio gets through to the master band, no lows. So if you play it, look at that, no audio. Because I have all my bands either off or muted. What's the difference between muted and off? Maybe it's like a CPU thing, but off is pretty much the same thing, except for now the analysis disappears. So maybe it's better for your CPU. So anyways, yeah, that's the deal with that. And so on the on, this applies for each band. So I want these off or muted because I only want to hear the low band. And I want my master band could be on or compression off. It doesn't matter. I'm not using my master band for anything. Let's say I wanted to use the lows and then for some reason have a second band, like almost as if I had two compressors, one right after the other. I could do that. So that's what's going on here. And by splitting the signal in this manner, so that's what's going on with my lows. With my mids, I have a similar configuration, only my mids are on and everything else is off. So, and oh, my master's on here, see? So it doesn't matter. So off, and then the same thing with the highs. So now I am doing processing here on the bands because I wanted to take advantage of splitting the signal. And I have different post effects allowing me to have extreme control over those frequencies. So that's that in a nutshell. Now let's get to this really cool example, you filter people, you. Now, let's stick to the lows because I like messing with the lows. So we see I've got some heavy compression going on here. We'll talk about this in the future. Now, how do you set your bands so you can choose what frequencies you want to appear there? Well, you go to your bands menu, of course, and I turn on my spectrogram so that I can see the frequencies. So I'm like, oh, look, there are the frequencies. And then I can move my low knob to determine where they go. You should really try automating this sometime. Be creative. You can alt click to reset it. I left it at their default value so they would split them in the low, mids, and highs. But I want to point out something to you right now. Maximus uses a series of filters that introduce a phase shift unless you turn on linear phase filters. This will introduce no phase shift. Now, I'm about to tell you what a phase shift is, so prepare yourself. I may even do a separate video for this because it's kind of a cool thing just in general. But what this means is okay, back it up a couple steps. Got to work my way up to this. Let's go over here. I have a compressor loaded up. And what's cool is you can ignore everything, but now you should start to really get the feel of what a lot of these buttons and bands. You see we have our bands with mute and bypass. So, and then A is for active. I believe B stands for bypass. Yeah, bypassed. So we can see our bands are clearly demonstrated. You will notice something. This high band, this mid band, first off, you might be wondering, why doesn't this band just form a line straight down saying frequencies no longer pass here? Frequencies up to like 40. So let's say it's 20 hertz, 40 hertz is right here, and then bang, no more. 41 hertz, screw you, dude. Never gonna hear you. Silence, we filtered you out. But we have issues, they're called phase shifts. So you notice that we have this our filter has a line and then it curves off like this, right? Like right here, we have this line curve. Why do they do that? Well, it's to reduce phase shifts because we don't want phase shifts. It colors your signal. And compressors, especially when mastering, this is a big deal. You don't want colored signal. So you might be saying to yourself, what is colored signal? Why does it matter? Because you see our midband has a lot of overlap with our highs and our lows. You could change it to be smaller, but the midband still has crossover points. If you're familiar with speakers use crossovers. Big speakers anyways, real systems. If you have like tiny speakers, they probably still might even use crossovers there too. But let's talk about this phase shift. So what kind of cool way can I demonstrate this to you? Well, I want to show you a sound and one without a fundamental tone. So I expect you to know about this for my sound synth basics. But what I've done is I have a harmonic here, and I have taken all the tones out except for the fundamental. As you see, the very first tone in this sound is left. So all I have is a harmonic series missing a fundamental. Sounds kind of high passed because it's got no fundamental. Then I could use another harmonic and simply move the phase around to change the phase and show you audible differences. But I thought it would be cool to have like a waveform that I could show you. So I decided to do citrus. Now we know from our theory that all these are a bunch of sine wave components. So all I need is to make a sine wave, which is drop dead easy in citrus, and then move the phase around of it and make sure that that sine wave is the bottom tone. So I took out the bottom tone in the saw wave series. So if all this doesn't make sense to you, don't worry too much. I'm just showing you the effects of a filter, of what filters can do when I say they can introduce phase shifts and why linear phase filters might be a thing for you. So here I've got it, and I can move the phase around, which is of course each part of the waveform's point relative towards time. Not polarity is the one where you can flip them back and forth. So phase is the relative to time thing. It's really useful when you're doing stuff with integrals and other various things, because then you can use rate of change and all. I mean, like, I'm not completely solid on a lot of those things, but I know a little bit more than most sound designers do. So let's talk about this. So if I move this around, you see it changes where the waveform starts. All that fancy talk was basically for that. But if you understand the fancy talk, you're way more on your way. This top line, all this top line does is it. You know what? I just realized, why did I do this with harmonic as a top end? I don't even know. But this top line, it allows you to add harmonics, and this controls the amplitude of our sine wave. So we have our sine wave here, and I have attached them to a layer so that when I play them, you see that it triggers the harmonic, the harmonic content, and it triggers the default. And I have that linked up to my MIDI keyboard, my typing keyboard. And so my harmonic, that's the harmonic, that is citrus. So this is the bottom tone. So as I move this phase around, you will see this is a phase shift. If I move, now we're looking at it on just one frequency. The reality is a compressor, what a compressor will do is, if it's not linear, the frequencies in this band's called the transition band. As it transitions down, it attenuates frequencies as it goes down. See, the problem is, well, okay, I'm going to keep it simple. There's a way more technical way to say this, but as it goes down, it will shift those frequencies, phases, causing all the above components after it to shift as well, because they're going to sum, well, they don't shift, but they sum differently to create a new harmonic series. It's not the same series anymore. So as I move this component, it's going to sum differently with our harmonic series, causing it to change. Now, if we were to do this with a filter, it would shift maybe the frequencies in here, causing all the other frequencies above and below, because it's summing the whole thing, to change. So let's look at this just with one frequency changing. Now I'm going to play it. I want you to listen really carefully to the timbre quality, the quality of the sound as I move it around. I'm going to hit the same note, and I got to cover one other thing. As I play it, whoops. There we go. As I play it, you will notice that it restarts on the same phase, meaning every time I play it, it goes back to the beginning. It starts at the same phase. Everything shifts back to the beginning. Why is that important? Well, some sounds have what's called rolling phase. Old analog synths have this as well. Well, not all of them. There's a whole load of details we could get into here, but basically, it's to provide a different sort of attack every single time, a different transient or click at the beginning, so that you get variation in your sound, natural variation. And so sometimes it was a limitation, but it sounded very organic, because the phases of each individual part of your signal would be slightly different, causing it to sum differently, but maintain its original timbre because the amplitude and pitches were still the same. So if that was all beyond you, just so you know, when I hit it, the point is it sounds exactly the same every single time. You hear that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now change the phase while I'm playing it, and therefore any changes we hear will be due to the phase of one frequency, one shifting. Now, the higher up this happens, the less well, okay, I'm not going to go on a limb and say that because there are a number of circumstances where that's not true. So here we go. So I'm going to play it and just move this around. So hopefully you heard it. That's very, very different. Now let me give you some spitball examples to give you a more noticeable change. So here, that is really different. I scrolled through it slowly. So when we're EQing, sometimes we don't hear the phase shift because we do it slow. It gets us. Filters, you filter people, you might be duped by that. Now that's of course the result of that. Now, I'm not getting into filter theory or anything right now, but these filters are where those things happen. And there is something called, we have IIR and FIR filters, which are two different processes that can eliminate phase shifts. One is more CPU intensive. Now, this only really matters when you're dealing with mastering, something that you don't want to color your sound. If you're going to drop an EQ on there, you're going to change the timbre quality of your sound, or maybe you like what it does to your sound, so you'll let it do its own thing. That's why some pieces of gear, gear will introduce non-linearities just from running through the components. So there's a whole load of other stuff. But that's basically what's going on. So when it has linear phase filters, it will preserve the original quality of your sound. It won't do any phase shifting, but it does take more CPU. It's generally a little bit of overkill and not super noticeable all the time. And that was a pretty extreme case, honestly, of phase shifting. Like, that was a lot. The steeper your filter, because we were doing a full, look at that. We went all the way so that the lowest point of the waveform was right there. That doesn't look like the lowest. Let's just do this. You see, we're getting down here. So it sums really differently. But in reality, most filters only shift it a little bit if they're good filters. You can think of filters sort of as division, a lot of division going on. But anyways, that's what it does. So when you select your frequencies, now with all that said, you're now prepared to understand something. Look at how many frequencies are in what we would term the mids. You'd expect it to be mostly mids. But listen, you'll hear some lows and some highs because it's got that bleed over with the other two. Listen to look at that. There's a ton we even have stuff up here. Like, what's the deal? And so you see, now if we turn this off, it's still the same. So just showing you again, the master band has nothing to do with that. Okay, so I just realized something that I totally forgot about. When you turn the highs and lows off, it activates something called mid-master mode, which is a special mode in Maximus where it eats all your frequencies together. So this is not a fair representation of what the mid-band would actually look like in a conventional compressor. We're going to talk about mid-master mode a little bit later with some special techniques. But basically what it does is it allows you to control the master band with the mid band when you turn the highs and lows off. So what we need to do is we need to mute it so that we get just the mids. That's really important. I can't believe I missed that. But anyways, just the mids. I guess that's one reason why you turn them off versus muted. So this allows you to get just the mids. So there we have just the mids. Okay. So that problem was solved. Now, so before, I guess that wasn't a totally true representation of it. We'll talk about, again, that a little bit later. But now you can select your frequencies. And now if we look at here, they have these two curves here. We have -12 and -24. And that allows you to select how steep your cutoff is. So let's open up TDR Nova. Why not? Let's open up another plugin. This is a free one. Go on my free VSTs plugin list. It's on there. One of the best free plugs ever. And I'm going to get rid of all the filters and just turn on the high pass and the low pass. So right now, there are 24 dB per octave. So when we're mixing our filters together, as we saw in this picture here, how they're doing this, well, in reality, it's more like this. This isn't an accurate drawing either. Depending on the type of filter they drew, there may even be bumps and resonances here. So we're not even phase shifts, just simply there are resonances that are also generated. So filters are a whole nother topic. But anyways, it puts these two together, it eliminates phase shifts, or at least it helps eliminate phase shifts, because a brick wall filters is kind of impossible to build. And then what you do is you sum those frequencies that are being taken out together, and because they've been filtered out, the filters cross at the correct point. When they sum together, you'll get your original signal back. So this is 24 per octave, and then the other option I believe is 12, which is a lot less steep. This also will be less prone to phase shifting. So it's a little more transparent, but you'll have more bleed between filters. I say this because the mid is in the middle, so it's got this on both sides, not just one side. So it's got the most bleed between the highs and the lows. And it also, so it's going to suffer the most from this. So you may consider 12 on this or not. But it also matters on what you choose for your other filter. They should match when you do this. So when you're doing this, and you can do it until maybe try it out with different recordings and get a setup that you like and save it as a preset, like mid, break, hard. Because this line right here, that is not how it is. That's just not how it's happening, okay? So just be aware of that. Now you have a low cut. Let's go back over to our lows. Our low cut is a filter that was designed specifically for this. So it's a really clean filter. It's not going to color your signal. I really like it. And so you can do that. You can experiment. If you follow my critical listening exercises, you could experiment with this and then experiment with other filters and begin to gain an ear for filter types, which is a really powerful tool that eventually I will cover in there. Now that's the lows, and then the highs are just the same thing with just the highs. Now let's talk about some examples of why this would be useful. So that's basically what's going on. Like if you grabbed all of that, good for you. As far as I know, no one really even talks about this, or even a lot of people don't even know that these issues exist. It's like insane to me. There are people that don't know, and they're teaching about it. Well, I guess when I first started, I didn't really know either. I came across it because I wanted to know more about the Fruity multiband compressor, and then I wanted to code an EQ, and then I had all these other things, and it got really bad. So I came across it from here first, though. I believe this is where I first ran into this. And I just started buying DSP books and reading it up. So I guess it's not that crazy, but there are little things that matter. And if you want to be industry standard, like a mastering engineer, you need to know about those because you don't want to be coloring your signal unnecessarily. And so I think I overlooked some of these details in one of the master tutorials I gave, now that I think about it. So I feel kind of bad about that. Well, look at that. That is a... Well, if you do it, whoa, look at that. If you do it fast, oh, it's not doing it anymore. Look at that. That's a mess. That's totally a glitch. Wow. So, okay. So now what are some of the things you can do with this? So as you split them in half, you can do different distortion. It depends mostly on your original content. So this one's sort of a synth thing. So maybe I could add some reverb to one band, but it'd be mostly subtle. If I was doing bass though, I could distort the low and mid and high differently, compress it differently, distort it again, and then multi-band split that and do weird stuff with that, and then sum it back into my original signal and do all these weird mixing things and have just a party. So that's really the power. But understanding all this other stuff is just so important towards using Maximus at all at first, because what's happening over these three bands happens inside each Maximus as you do this. So the crossovers will be determined automatically. You don't have to configure them manually like we were doing here. They will be determined automatically just when you move the filters around, and you can change the filters here and now have no problem with the phasing between them. So you could have a low 24 and then a mid 12. That would have some interesting implications on the color it would give your signal, which it was just a different option you have for Maximus. So yeah, if you have any questions about this, let me know. If this was a little overwhelming, I'm sorry. I really don't know of any simpler way. I spent a while trying to think of like, how can I show this? How can I show this? I think this was a pretty good way to show it. Hope you got it. If you support me, check out my Patreon. I am grateful for anything. It allows me to continue to make these videos if you find them useful. Subscribe and have a blessed day. And that moment too, that's a cool moment. So the moments are this one, that's cool, this one, that one, that's cool, and this one.